Okay. Hello, my name is Emin Askerov, and this is the second episode of What's Up with Startups, where I deconstruct and investigate the startups in energy transition, their impact, their role, and how they're faring. This is the second episode, and this is going to be a solo episode because between COP28 and Christmas holidays, there was just so little time, and of course, no video podcast was on the agenda with any of the startups I was speaking to. However, I've already got two more startups that we will interview in January, so stay tuned for that. And next year we're sure to pick up the speed with this podcast, and hopefully the startups will also pick up the speed, as we will see today. So let's see what was in the works this year, and let's start with the grand, I think the biggest event in the energy transition space in this year, the Conference of the Party number 28, the COP28, and how it fared. So let me just share a screen with you, and we will go with a little presentation of mine. Just a sec. That's it. Okay, so here we go. The COP28. Now this is the nice, cozy area tucked away at the corner of the green zone in COP28, where people actually talked about startups. And during the whole period of these COP28, there was actually good, as I was told, a good closed startup focus day, which was, I think, the day 2 of the COP. And it was closed. I think it was by invitation only, unfortunately. My decision to go to COP28 was a spur of the moment thing. And I was in Abu Dhabi for actually working with 2 other startups. And I didn't initially plan to go to COP. But then I realized, well, why not? And I checked the program. I said, okay, now there are quite a few interesting things for me. And I was right. And it was good that I came. And I will make sure I'll come next year, specifically for the thing that interests me, i.e. startups in energy transition. So I was there on the day 4 and day 5, and that was not enough, frankly speaking. So you will see why. So for one thing, the COP had the green area of COP28, where everybody could get access, had a special place devoted to startups, which was called the Startup Village. You could see it on the top right as a street where you had this little booth where the startups were housed, and below right there's a list of the startups that were there and the map. So I think in total about a couple of dozen startups, maybe 50 total. And that's not all. I mean, the startup village was there, but there were also startups, dispersed, sprinkled among this green zone. And that you could find them anywhere. I mean, I found one startup, which is the 1.05, 1.5, I think, or 1.5, which do the direct air capture. They were in energy transition pavilion, and then there were others. And there were two innovation pavilions. There was a special area for an electric transport. So there were a lot of cool things to see. And had a good walk, and I met some new startups. And the one I wanted just to take a brief detour, like go really, really granular here, but you'll get the idea why. So I met the startup called Liten. It's written here on the battery. Oh, right there. It's a startup that's making lithium sulfur batteries, which are thought to be much more energy dense than your normal lithium-ion batteries, and could be also cheaper this way per kilowatt hour, per kilowatt of density. And I singled them out because a couple of years ago, when I was presenting an investment case to an investment committee about why we should invest in making lithium-ion batteries, there was a man on this committee who was really keen on lithium sulfur, and he made me go a long way to evaluate this technology, to explore it. And in the end, I just showed, look, everybody, there's a market consensus, there's a technological and scientific consensus that these batteries will, maybe, if they ever will, they might become commercialized, produced on scale somewhere after 2030. So outside of scope of our investment decision. So we were making that decision in 2019, I think. So, and what now? Now, Lithium, they show that they will start to mass produce these lithium sulfur batteries next year or the year after. So they already succeeded in laboratory in testing. There was a big issues about stabilities of lithium sulfur, but they're already there. So it's highly likely that lithium sulfur batteries will be available, will be commercialized, and will be mass produced by the end of this decade, which was not in the books just a few years ago. Now, I checked also, it's not only lithium, there are several other startups also working on lithium sulfur, and they looks like that they will succeed. So it's a good story about the scaling, and a good story that proves the case. And I would say that it shows that even the technologies which are difficult, there's a difficult chemistry to manage, they still can do it, and they still can grow. So the UAE, they put a lot of emphasis on startups in this COP, and it was really nice to see. And for example, here is a session, a panel session with startups and the investors. You can guess who is from startup and who is from investor side here. Of course, the guys with the ties and suits and the traditional UAE dress, of course, the investors, and the others are from startups. So the startups are not only on the COP, they were not only in the COP, but they were also on the agenda of the UAE, and they have a few innovation hubs and investors. Well, the famous one is the Masdar, and but I was in Masdar twice this visit, and frankly speaking, looks empty. I mean, I know there are startups, there are few, very few, and it's still looks rather like a museum than a bustling hub of activity. But the truth is, Masdar and Mubadala, they do invest a lot in renewable energies. They do invest a lot in energy transition technologies, and that's cool. And we should thank them for that. And now, in this particular session, which I put the picture up, in this session, they announced that they're going to be forming a sort of a joint venture with Hub71, a Dubai-based startup accelerator, which has about a couple of dozens of startups already up and running. And they will do a platform where the startups will try to scale start the day. And Catalyst is a venture capital fund arm of Masdar, and so they will be looking into this issue of scaling quite thoroughly next year. So we'll see what it amounts to, because if you look at the map of the startup activity in the world, you won't see UAE on this map. It's really tiny by the volumes compared to United States or even to Europe. But I mean, it was a good case. I mean, COP made a good case to show this, that there are startups, there is a market for them, albeit small. And I personally, there's a woman like in the center of the stage. She said that she had a food tech startup, and she found the market there in UAE. But climate tech startup would find it hard time to do anything because the demand is coming from just a few big companies in the UAE. They should probably broaden it up somehow, but I have no idea so far how they plan to do that. So there's another funny thing about the startups in UAE is that, and particularly in corporate, I got complaints from a few startups that renting this booth in the startup village cost a fortune, and putting up a stand in one of the pavilions even more than that. So it's I think only the big guys like Omium or 1.5 could, with the big sponsors, could some marshal the cash necessary to put up that put up those stands there. And I would say only startups that would have no funding problems currently would be able to participate in COP, because I also met one founder who really enjoyed the sessions and all the vibe, but he said, well, he would like to pitch his startup here, but I mean, just too expensive. So around the same time that COP28 was taking place, let's shift gears a little bit and zoom out. McKinsey and company published a preview of a report that they're going to publish in 2024. And the report was exactly about startups and scaling climate technologies. And they named it as the most critical task that we face now in energy transition and in keeping global temperatures from rising over 2 degrees centigrade. Because, I mean, 1.5, we are not likely to get there, but keeping it under 2 C will require scaling massively new technologies, all of which are basically run by startups. And they put this network of 12 technologies that is required to be scaled to achieve climate goals. So renewables here are no surprise, and you see that they are over here, and they act as an enabler of other technologies, hydrogen, batteries, heat pumps, sustainable fuels, the rest. But the thing is that there are a lot of technologies. They're all in different stage of readiness. So, but they have 2 challenges basically, all of them. First, they have to commercially win the incumbent technologies. Sustainable fuels have to win with oil, renewables have to win against coal and gas, alternative proteins have to win against the Wagyu steak, and so on and so forth. So that's a hard thing to do. I mean, win commercially, like on price, quality, access. And the second challenge is that they will have to do it about 2 or 3 times as fast. That it usually takes for one technology to displace the other. In all of the energy transitions, all of the new technologies, scaling them and getting them to at least like half of the market share took them on average 30 years. 30, 40 years, it's what it takes a technology to scale. I mean, take even chips. I mean, chips they started to be manufactured in 1960s. Now it's only this century, so after 40 years, that they became so widespread, so embedded in all of the technologies that we have, that it's unthinkable to not have them. But before that, I mean, even in the 90s, you could still have a car with only a few chips or even no chips. But now, that's a completely different story. So, but that took them such an important technology took them almost 40 years. Now, for the climate tech, we don't have 40 years, frankly speaking. We have like 10, well, 15 at most. So they have to compete on price, and they have to do it faster than any other technology in the history of mankind have scaled. Well, let's see how that's possible. Now, here is another picture from the McKinsey report, and you see on the left side is a share of total abatement of CO2 and equivalents by each technology by 2050. And so only 10% of the total, only 10% of the abatement can be done today by technologies which are commercially available and competitive today in certain segments, which is, of course, onshore wind, solar PV, all in the regions, only in the regions with a good grid connections, large-scale nuclear, and plant-based dairy. Also, only 10% are already scaled and ready to compete, and we can scale them up even further. Now, 45%, almost half of the CO2 to be abated, can be abated by technologies like onshore, solar, offshore wind, electric vehicles, heat pumps, hydrogen, biofuels, forestry, and so on and so forth. But these technologies are still commercialization. The offshore wind, they hit, so as the journalist put it, they hit headwinds this year. So there were a few big projects were canceled in the offshore wind industry. Well, passenger battery electric vehicles do enjoy a good ride. Sales grow. Even hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, even they grow. Heat pumps got a lot of attention this year, and of course, these technologies could be scaled fast and could be scaled like in the next decade. Now, everything else is what is called early innovation or still in concept, which probably will not reach commercial scale anywhere like in the next 10, 15, or even 20 years. However, say lithium sulfur does. Prove me wrong here, but I wouldn't make a general case out of it. So the small modular nuclear reactors, carbon capture, utilization, storage, direct air capture, and so on and so on. Well, you can argue with each of this. Technologies, whether they should be there or not. But I generally believe all of them should be there, and we have to do whatever it takes to abate those emissions. But still, you can see the enormity of the problem. I mean, there's no other way we can abate those emissions either than using these technologies, using these nascent technology. And so with that, how are they actually, how do the startups actually done? How have they fared this year? How was investment in them? Well, it appears it was not so good. This is the data from Climate Tech VC. It's a website. They aggregate data on climate tech and all the investments in climate tech. And you can see here that since third quarter of 2021, things have been going down. So investment was decreasing. And year on year, say in first quarter 23 compared to first quarter of 22 and second quarter 23 compared to second quarter 22, the investments were down like 40%. And that were not big before that. I mean, the graph here excludes everything pre-2020s. There was even less. So this is quite stark difference to what has been said in COP28 by McKinsey and other people, but the money is not there. So the money has been going actually out of climate tech startups, and very fast, to say the least. And it's interesting to see where exactly, I mean, which specific parts of investment ladder did this money will reduce the most. And here it is. You see, like the seed stage, right? Just a nascent technology. You're just starting out. You have only the idea. Try to find your market fit. Actually, the funding have been, pretty. It was growing a little bit, but still growing. However, in all the Series B, Series C growth stage, has been an enormous fall. I mean, especially on the late stage, Series C and growth stage. This is where we want the money, the investors' money to be. Now, I mean, come back to this here. So this technologies, we want investors' money to be now, for them to scale rapidly. And what we see, like minus 72%. So I don't have the data yet for the second half of the year. Probably be available early next year. I will be sure to update that. But it seems that investors suddenly got really, really skeptical of this. At the same time as all the policymakers and experts and whoever have been declaring that this is where we need the money. Now, we talked a little bit with Maria about in our first episode about why this is important. Why should we talk about startups and energy transition? And they do have, like, the risk tolerance of big funds who usually invest in late stage or strategic investors, infrastructure investors, you can say. They have the projects at this stage C or later still carry too much risks for them to invest. Now, and for early stage, venture capitalists, usually they're not ready to, cash out on the asset-heavy startups. Need, all this devices and chemistry and laboratories and so on, who are not sure to scale and who are sometimes serve quite niche areas, or whose demand is unclear. I mean, everybody talks about hydrogen, that it's going to grow, but from what I've seen, just finished the research for one client, and what I see is that, of course, the announcements of the investments are huge, but the demand is not there. It's simply not there. There's no offtakes. There's no client commitment. So, unfortunately, that's the valley of death of the startups in climate tech. And it is there, and it is clearly seen in these pictures in the funding of 2023. So what does this year, the 23, holds for startups? Can't say it was a year of startups. Certainly it wasn't. It was a year that we realized, and a lot of the industry, not the industry, the energy transition crowd said, okay, these guys are crucial to our net zero goals. Before that, it was all about government or big corporations making pledges. Then there was financiers. They said, okay, we're going to finance. Well, they're not there yet. They are there with the mouse, but not yet with the foot. So it was a year of beginning of global realization that startups, we can only innovate our way out of the climate crisis. And these are the companies, this is where we should focus. This is where we should look at. Because otherwise, for big corps, any big corporation, it's just business as usual. Of course, they support some startups. They do have accelerators and whatnot, but it's clearly not enough. So what will the next year hold? rebound in financing, tightening of the market. I won't make any forecast here, I have to say. I would say that next year, I will just make one forecast. Next year, I will be talking to startups who dare to challenge, dare to navigate these waters, who not afraid of this crunch in financing, who get there and do things. And I may fight against the odds, and I will ask them how they do it, who helps them, what expertise, what tools do they rely on. And I will also go to investors, experts who work with these startups, who fund them, and ask them, how do they see this market? How does it play out? How they will profit from it, and how they will make sure that the money is paid back. So stay tuned, and wish you all good holidays, Merry Christmas, and take a good break. And I will come back with guests to this video podcast next year, middle of January and the end of January, and then we will do twice per month shows where we will see how this will play out, how the startup movement, how the startup growth in energy transition will play out. So let me just check if I have any questions. It seems that I don't, but it's okay. Please feel free to put them under this video. I will regularly come back and answer them. So thank you very much. Wish you all Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good luck.